Hello and welcome to the 905 podcast. I am Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
We've got something a bit different for you this week. You'll be forgiven if you haven't heard of Hamilton Forge FC, especially if you don't live in Hamilton, but you really should have. Forge FC are Hamilton's soccer team in the Canadian Premier League, and they're good. They're, really good. In the first 5 years of the league, they've won the championship 4 times and been to the final every single year. Both the Canadian Premier League and Forge FC were established just 5 years ago, with the CPL becoming the top-level professional soccer league for Canada, with teams from coast to coast travelling to play 28 games a season. Forge play at Tim Hortons Field, home of the Ticats, and travel to play teams from Vancouver Island to Halifax. At the end of October, they played at home in front of 14,000 fans in a game that saw a thrilling end to the season. I was fortunate enough to be in the crowd. With the season on the line in extra time, Forge went a goal down to a great strike by their rivals, Cavalry, from Alberta. After 90 minutes in which neither team had been able to get past their opponent's defence, the chances of a comeback for Hamilton seemed pretty slim, but we were wrong. Minutes later, Forge's Béni Badibanga scored a goal that would grace any highlight reel. Hamilton were alive, and with the final whistle approaching, Forge won a corner, and then this happened.
Tristan Borges, a player known for his moments of the extraordinary from the corner flag, service and goals. Borges tries to rip it! Tristan Borges at Olympico in extra time! Are you kidding me?
An absolutely unbelievable goal, and Hamilton had secured another championship. People assume that because I grew up in England, I'm a soccer fan, but I never was. All the soccer matches I've ever seen in person have been in Canada. First, the Canada women's team during the World Cup that was held here, and now Hamilton Forge. And I've got to say, I really like what Forge have built in just a few years. Not just that they have a winning team, although that certainly helps, but that they've built a soccer club that has the feel of a club rooted in Hamilton's community, as if it's been here for decades. A club that suits its gritty working-class home among the streets of the East End, just like the old stadiums at Arsenal's Highbury or Liverpool's Anfield were built steps away from the terraced homes of their fans. Soccer is a game that feeds on the passion brought by its fans more than any other. Forge and its fans seem to have built that relationship very fast. We thought this was a 905 story that deserved more attention than it's getting in mainstream media. 14,000 people turning out on a cold fall evening is a big deal, whether you're a soccer fan, a sports fan, or just want to see good things succeed in our region. So today we have 2 interviews. In the second half of the episode, we're going to be talking to Erick Harrisson, president of the Barton St Batallion, Forge's supporters group, about what it means to have a professional soccer team in Hamilton. But first we speak to Kyle Bekker, captain of Hamilton Forge since 2019, who has presided over the team's incredible success. Kyle grew up just down the road in Oakville and has played for Toronto FC, Dallas and Montreal in the MLS before coming to Hamilton, and has also won 18 caps playing for the Canada team. Welcome Kyle Bekker, captain of Hamilton Forge FC. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So, Hamilton Forge is one hell of a story, really. It's, this is 5th year, right, that you've just come out of. You've been the captain the whole time, I understand. And you've now won the whole thing for the 4th time, and you almost won it the 5th time. That's kind of amazing. There aren't many sports teams in any league in any country that can claim that level of success. Did you sort of see this happening coming into it when you joined the team back 5 years ago?
Honestly, no. Obviously, we were hopeful to win that first championship, and I think that kind of set in motion a lot of the success that followed. But I think coming into that first year, you're looking at it very much like a startup company, and you're hopeful, you're bought into the people more so than the plan, I think, because everyone's going to have that same plan. Oh, we're going to come in, we're going to be great, this is how we're going to play, we're going to win the first season, everything's going to be just sunshine and roses, but the reality is it's very difficult to be in at the ground floor essentially, and buy in right away, and have a group that buys in right away. But I think that speaks to the people that we have at Forge FC, starting from the very top, and an owner of Bob Young, and how determined and how much he's done for the game in this country, and what he's done for just the city of Hamilton. I think you've seen it in the Ticats, the buy-in that you get from fans week in and week out, even though they haven't had that success of a Grey Cup in some time, and they've been very unlucky. Obviously, they've been to the final a bunch of times, but haven't really crossed that finish line. You still have people coming week in and week out because they believe what the club does. And then you bring in a guy like Bobby Smirnionis, Costa, who was bought in from the very beginning. Obviously, he's moved on to work for the league, but you have pillars like that, and you start to talk to them and see what their vision is and what they believe in and how they think we're going to achieve success. And then you start adding piece by piece, and little by little, it was like, okay, yeah, this is great. Absolutely. I think we can do something special here. But 5 years down the road, you fast forward and you say, oh, we've been in 5 finals. We've won 4 of them. We've competed on the CONCACAF level, and we've done brilliantly for our country, and winning games in our first year of existence was crazy against the likes of a team like Olympia. And you're sitting there and you're like, guys, come on. What are we doing here? It's been wild. And then I'm obviously skipping over a ton of stuff, but playing against Cruz Azul, playing in the Azteca, you have a Canadian kid in David Chouanier who's scoring a goal at the Azteca, which is just unbelievable. And it's been a wild ride.
And you're from Oakville originally, right? So, I mean, I was thinking, I came to Canada back in 2003, and even then, soccer wasn't such a big deal as it is now. Growing up in Oakville, did you ever think you'd be able to sort of play in your own backyard, so to speak, at a professional level, and like also be winning like a major league kind of award? I mean, you must have, learning soccer, realizing you're pretty damn good at it. I think, well, wherever I end up playing, it's not going to be in Canada, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I've said this a few times over the last 5 years, talking about the league and how important it is. But I look back to moments when I was growing up, and you're sitting in a classroom, whether it's grade 1, 2, or 3, and everyone's like, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" You say, "I want to be a soccer player." It's like, unless there's people in your class who played soccer, like no one, like, all right, like, who is this guy? Like, obviously we know about the NHL, we know about the Leafs. That's a very possible thing. Yeah, it's still a dream. It's a pipe dream, but like, people don't really understand it. And then it's growing up. You have to have your favorite team has to be an international team. It has to be a Premier League team. It has to be, maybe at the time it's a team from Serie A, because there's limited games that were actually on TV. And then within that, you're obviously only picking between the major teams. You're not getting that full sample size. You're not going to see every single team in the Premier League play week in and week out. It's very difficult to follow those games. So that was just like, this is just the norm. That's what it is. Oh, unfortunately in Canada, we don't have it. So Arsenal is going to be my favorite team. I'm going to follow them. And then I think the funniest thing was the classic is, you're like, oh, what country are you going to play for when you grow up? It's like, you're 100% Canadian, but you're going after where your grandparents are from. Oh, I'm going to get my passport from this country. I'm going to play for this country. And now it's like, to know that there's professional soccer in our backyard, and there's kids in the stadium who might be 8, 9, 10, they're starting their career, and they're like, I'm going to play for Forge. I'm going to sign for this team when I'm 17, 18 years old. I'm going to make a name for myself. And then I'm going to go on and go to Europe and continue my journey. It's unbelievable. It's crazy. Before this final, and knowing how we were going to pack the stadium, and there's going to be about 10,000+ fans there, and just thinking back to my childhood, it's like, I can remember a game. I still have pictures of it. I went down to Old Bronny Park, and the Toronto Lynx were just playing some random game there, and I think there might have been like 1,000 fans, and I had pictures with the players after the game, and it was just like, I look back at that and I was like, that was the greatest thing I'd ever seen at the time.
Yeah.
Like, people were coming to watch these guys play. The fact that they had the little change rooms on the side, I was like, yep, this is professional. This is it. This is what it's all about.
Big leagues.
Well, it's the funniest thing in the world.
I mean, on that note, we the other half of this episode is going to be with Erick Harrisson, the leader of the Barton St Batallion, and I want to know, from your perspective as a player, I'll be honest, soccer's not my top sport, but I find that the interaction between the franchise and its fans a very unique one in professional sports overall. And I'm just wondering, you as the team captain, and maybe you can speak to the other guys on the team. What is that relationship like to you? Like, how does that fuel your passion and drive to succeed? You know, because I mean, in Hamilton, it is Cat City, but you guys are, 4 to 5 years, you guys are walking away with the top prize in the league. That's not something to shy away from. And I'm just wondering, like, how's that relationship with the fans kind of fuel that? Does it just how does that work with you guys?
Yeah, well, I think part of that question, like when you zoom out and you look at the global game and the relationship between the fans and the game itself. When I go back to my childhood, I was lucky enough to go over to England, and I saw my first professional game was a game at Old Trafford. Manchester United was playing; they were playing in Champions League, and David Beckham, I think, scored a goal. They beat Lille 1-0. It was in like the 88th minute, and that experience like just broke my brain. I love the game. I love playing it week in and week out, but being in that stadium and seeing how the fans reacted and what it was like, and how the away fans were escorted in and they stayed in their section and they just went as crazy for 90 minutes as everyone else in the Manchester in their section. And like the way fans would speak to players about, like, there was a guy who was sitting behind me and he was calling Ryan Giggs Ryan the whole game, like as if he was his best friend. Like, come on, Ryan, do this. And there's a chance and the whole stadium stands up. And what that just felt like, it was honestly, it was like love at first sight. And so obviously you go through your whole career, that's like the dream. You want to play in front of those fans, and having the opportunity to play in a packed stadium with 25,000, 30,000 fans is an unbelievable experience. And you want that, you chase that feeling. And then coming back to Forge FC and understanding that this is very much a startup company. So it is a little different because it's unique in that we can create these personal relationships with the fans that you can't necessarily have at a level of a Manchester United or the Premier League, because they're just so big. These guys are larger than life figures. It's hard to have those one-on-one interactions. So to be able to be here on the ground floor and create that, and have guys like Eric and Alan previously, who was doing a ton of good stuff with Barton St, you're creating these connections. You're on the very like human level, you're having that first interaction. And Eric's story is special. Like, the guy didn't give a shit about soccer, and then he came to a game, and a friend brought him to Barton, or brought him into that section, and he was just like, I fell in love with it. And the whole thing is, it's a sense of community, and I think that's what separates this game from other ones. Is across the world, it's like if you have a team, you have an identity. You all of a sudden you belong to something, and how special that is to create that from the ground floor and be a part of it. It's something I definitely don't take for granted, but it's it's unique.
I'm not comparing myself to Eric in any shape or form, but I mean, I grew up in England, but I wasn't actually really a soccer fan. But I've been, I got into watching a bit of the women, obviously, in the Olympics and the Women's World Cup, and that was awesome. And then my girlfriend brought me to a few Forge games, and it's terrific. It's that community feel. It feels like a team that's been around forever. It doesn't feel like a team that was founded 5 years ago. It feels like it's got sort of deep roots in the community. And then I was at the final 2 weeks ago, and that was just, absolutely incredible. I mean, the extra time. I mean, you couldn't write a script better than that in a lot of ways. You go down the goal.
It's something you won't see in a final, I think, for a very long time. Yeah. It was crazy. And it's interesting. I think you touched on it there. It's like the fact that it feels like it's a club that's been around. I think that just kind of speaks to Canada in a nutshell. I think Hamilton's such a melting pot of Europeans that there is this feeling that like this game has been around forever, and these people have just been crying out for something to actually have that they can call their own, because they've just been missing it from their actual own community. So again, we're seeing something that is in the infancy stage still. I think 5 years, it's still incredibly young. I think the challenge that we have as a league as a whole is everyone knows what the finished product of this wants to look like, and everyone's going to have their own little individual wants and needs that they want to see from the league. But we have to remember, you have to go brick by brick. It's going to be a process, and I think the thing that everyone has to remember is year over year, this thing has grown. The league's getting more and more competitive. The fans continue to grow in numbers. Obviously, there's challenges that we have in this country in terms of getting stadiums to bring in new teams and continue to push it forward and make it even more competitive. But you're seeing how much of an impact this league has already had just in terms of the player side of things, because there's players that have come out of the woodwork and people are now, where's this guy been? Why hasn't he been somewhere else? But the fact is, before 2019, there was only three doors open to the professional game in this country. And now we have 11 now, which is huge. And that's going to continue to grow. And you're just going to see it. And it's going to change from a fan perspective. It's going to change from a league perspective in terms of more and more people wanting to buy into this league and be a part of it, whether it's on the front office end, whether it's on the coaching end, all these things. And it's just going to continue to get better and better.
You looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.
So, one big thing, is like you're obviously getting support from the community. Like you say, I think a kind of blue collar town like Hamilton is a soccer team like the Forge just really fits Hamilton, right? In a way, like the Ticats kind of fit Hamilton too. They're just, I love that kind of blue collar deal, and the community is kind of like you say, that it's almost like they've been waiting for something like this. Now, day after most of the games I've been to, I go and check the spec, and it's like, oh, I'll go and see what the game review's like, and there's nothing, and that really pissed me off. It's like, come on, spec, you don't have that much. How many sports teams are there in Hamilton that are winning year after year after year? I mean, you maybe don't want to be rude about media and stuff. I appreciate you have to do that, but I mean, would you like a little bit more support from local media?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the ins and outs of how that they operate, right? But it just takes people, and I know there's one reporter from the Spec and Steve Milton who's been with us since the very beginning, and I'm sure he's fighting a good fight over there, and I don't know how many resources he has or what he's allowed to do or not to do, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it just takes individuals to be like, I'm going to buy into this the same way it takes fans to buy into it and come week in and week out. Like, you're not going to reap the reward right away, but there's unbelievable things happening here, and it's happening at a bigger scale, and you're seeing it all the way up to the national team and the result in getting to a World Cup for the first time in over 30 years. And what's that going to mean? We're about to host the World Cup, and how important that's going to be. And I think it just takes people speaking about it. Obviously, we've been caught up in the frustrations between the CBA that's ongoing through the players and the CSA, and I think that distracts from all the good that's actually happening. Like, we're in the best place this country's ever been with this game in its history, and we're getting wrapped up in all the nonsense that's going around about it, rather than celebrating all the good that's happening. And I think the negative side to that is what you saw what happened with the women in their last World Cup. There's so many distractions leading up to it, and it's like they've done so good, where it's like, can we not just put this on the back burner? Why are we focusing on the wrong stuff, rather than let's give them what they need to put them in the best place to be successful, because they have a very successful team. They have a ton of young talent in that group that's unbelievable and needs to be celebrated, needs to be showcased, and we're focusing on all the wrong stuff. So I think that's going to always be an ongoing battle, which is difficult in this country, because, as I said earlier, like, we know what the finished product looks like, so we're always going to compare ourselves. But the reality is we are nothing in this game, in this world. Like, we are one of the smallest fishes in the pond, and we need to kind of stay humble in that and keep it going. And I mean, again, it's obviously, you spoke about the media coverage, and it's one of those things. I think from a player's perspective, it feels a little frustrating, because it always seems to be done in a negative light, rather than showcasing all the good that's going on and the amazing strides that we've done in this country. So I think it's something that's going to continue to grow. As I said, it's always going to be an evolution, and hopefully it just figures itself out and keeps going the right way.
I was just going to say, on that note of, staying humble and working hard, I'm going to put on my best Sportsnet or TSN hat and fire a question to you. So 5 years, 4 championships. We're talking Forge FC becoming a dynasty in the Canadian Premier League. I'm wondering, you as team captain, how do you keep focused? Because right now you're the target in the league. Every other team saying, no, we got to knock these guys off the pedestal, and we got to take down, we got to take that championship for ourselves. You as team captain, how do you keep your team focused on keeping that record going, and next season just going for the top spot again?
Oh, it's funny. So leading up to this final, I think I caught myself, because it's one that I've used now, I guess, for the last 5 years, where it's like the reality when you're playing this game at a high level, playing for championships, playing for trophies, those games don't come around too often. And I think in the first year it was perfect. We signed a guy in David Edgar, who had experience playing in the Premier League, had experience playing in the championship, played in massive games throughout his entire career, never played for a final. He won promotion into the Premier League with Burnley, but they secured it, and I think their second place finish. So they weren't actually playing in that playoff. They weren't actually playing for a trophy, which is an incredible achievement. But he's like, he didn't have that feeling. So when he was coming to his first year in 2019 with Forge, and he had the opportunity to play in that final, the home and away against Calgary, he was one of the most excited, buzzing players on our team. This guy had a 16-year career coming to that point, because he knew how important it was to play in those games. Obviously, fast forward down to this last one, we had some guys on this team who've been here since the very beginning, like myself, and it was like I was caught myself sounding like a broken record. But on the flip side is you just don't want to take those games for granted, because whether you're starting your career and you've had, like we have guys who are in their second year and they've now won 2 trophies, they're going to move on and they might not be able to play in these games. So relish these moments, cherish them, because they're special. You don't know the next time you're going to play in them. As far as keeping it fresh, there's always going to be new challenges. You said it. We're the team that everyone wants to come after. We have a target on our back, but that's a good thing. You have to realize that pressure in this sense is a privilege. You don't want to be the guy who's finished in last, never played in a playoff game in this league in its first 5 years, and you've been a part of everyone. So you have to realize that it kind of comes with the territory. When you have success, everyone wants to see you fail. And that's just been something I think that motivates us at the end of the day. And then obviously just working with the coaching staff and trying to keep things fresh, continuing to grow. How do we get better? How do we continue to push the envelope? And I think this year was one of the years we struggled with it the most, because we've had guys who, as I said, been here since the very beginning. We have guys who came in their first year, won a trophy last year. They're here. It almost feels like, yeah, it's a foregone conclusion. We're going to play in this final, so I can take our foot off the pedal. But you have to remind them that you have to show up every single day, be consistent, because you want to go on and do bigger and better things. You want to continue to push the envelope. You want to make a name for yourself, so other people are knocking at our door saying, we need to take this guy off your hands. And we have guys who have ambitions, and it's just really, I guess, reminding themselves of what they want to do, what they want to achieve, and how I can show up every single day and kind of put them with the best foot forward and go for it.
I think it's probably a good point to leave it. Let's, here's to 5 more years at least of success, but and above all, the success of the league as a whole and the success of the team growing in Hamilton. I think it's a fantastic good news story for the city, for the region, and I hope some people, as a result of this podcast, get out next year, see some games. It's a good show that's being put on, so really encourage people to do that. Thank you so much, Kyle Bekker, for joining us. It's a real pleasure. It was a real pleasure watching the games this year, and the final in particular. It's one that's going to stick with me for a while. All the very best with future endeavors.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Kyle. Don't go anywhere. We've got our second interview with Erick Harrisson of the Barton St Batallion coming up right after this. Welcome, Erick Harrisson, President and leader of the Barton St Batallion, the Hamilton Forge FC supporters club, and very vocal part of the crowd at all the games. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Being a supporter of the Forge is pretty much one of the best gigs in sport at the moment. This is a team that was founded just a few years ago, and since when it's pretty much won almost everything that it's been possible to win in the new Canadian soccer Premier League. Yeah, I mean, it's really, they've just won it again a couple of weeks ago, and so it's a good time to be a supporter, I guess.
I don't think there's a better time.
And so, I mean, it is a new club, but the impression I've got going to a few games is it kind of feels like a club that's been around a long time now. It feels, you can tell from my accent, it comes from Europe, originally from Britain, and that kind of community feeling of clubs that exist in cities that have been around for 100 years or something.
Yeah,
Forge feels a little bit like that. Is that kind of how it feels to you? I mean, what drew you to the Forge originally, and what kind of persuaded you to sort of get behind this new club?
So Barton St Batallion actually originated in 2016 before Forge was even founded.
Oh wow!
So the supporters group's been around a lot longer. Had their name. We had our logo. The logo changed for the first year once we knew what our colors were and everything. Right. The original logo was yellow and black, city colors. Right. I don't think we're quite there yet. Like you look at Europe, these clubs have been around for 100 years. They've grown and developed over time. Their supporter groups are wild, and maybe one day we'll reach that. But for 5 years in, I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I mean, for people who haven't been following this, there were clips on Twitter the day after the last final. There was this incredible goal by Borges.
Yep.
Excuse me if I'm getting the names. Yeah. Right in front of the most dedicated, well, in front of the battalion, so to speak. It was I didn't know this was a phrase before. It was an Olympico goal, which is when you score from the corner straight into the goal, no one else getting in between. It was the winning goal of the game, as it turned out.
Yeah.
And the crowd went absolutely berserk. It was a terrific kind of sight. I was on the opposite side of the field, but it was still pretty terrific over there too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you had Badibanga's goal in front of you, right?
Yeah.
And that was a spectacular goal too.
It was. It's got kind of overshadowed. I mean, because that was an amazing goal too. The Forge went one down in overtime, so it's like, oh my goodness, things are not looking so great. And then two amazing goals right after that.
You know what? To credit Ali Musi, Calvary striker, like his goal was really nice too. Like it was 3 bangers in that game.
It was, and a disallowed goal that was pretty good too.
Right. So I mean, if you weren't a fan before and you were at that game, you are a fan now. And if you weren't at that game, everyone should ask themselves why they weren't at that game.
Well, that's kind of another, it's a big part of why we wanted to cover this on the podcast. We covered sort of news from the region, from Hamilton, but also around the 905. And I know that I've been, I started going to a couple of games last year, and I opened up the spec the next day, thinking, I'll look at the coverage of the game, because it was, it was a good game. Nothing. It's like so there were about, I don't know, maybe 10,000 people at that game, 10,000 Hamiltonians doing something on a Saturday afternoon, evening, and the paper's not covering it. And that's been the case. It seems like this is a really big deal when you're at the game, and yet the kind of it's not getting the coverage that it deserves. Maybe is that something that you feel?
Yeah, it's frustrating for sure, because the league as a whole isn't getting the coverage that it deserves, let alone the club. The city's really got to do their part, whether it's the paper, radio, television, like Cable 14, for instance, here, right?
Mm-hmm.
They got to do their part and help promote it, and it's going to grow. But it's a struggle right now because we're faced with that problem where nobody's covering it. So how do you get the word out? You go and tell people, oh, come see this. What's holding them to go and do it? What's holding them to go to the game and see what it's about? Oh, it's soccer. I don't like soccer, right?
But a lot of people do like soccer now, don't they? I mean, there's obviously,
100%.
And in Hamilton, big Italian community, big Croatian community. These are sort of soccer-loving nations. A lot of Brit expats as well. So the audience is kind of there. And I mean, I've been really impressed by the turnout. And sure, it's not filling up Tim Hortons Field, but it's filling up a big chunk of it, and that's without a whole bunch of coverage in sort of mainstream media. So it really shows, And from my point of view, if you're looking at wanting to go and see a game, it's cheap. The beer's $5. Try and get that at a Leafs game.
Yeah, right.
I just go ahead. Eric. No, my thoughts were just Hamiltonians love sports. I mean, and you got the Bulldogs playing, and of course everyone says Ticats. When you think of Hamilton and sports, immediately you go to Ticats. But looking into the Forge FC, you guys, what you guys have going there is something I'm a stand at. 5 years, 5 years being franchise, and 4 of those are championship years. I do not know of a franchise in any sports league, forget the Canadian Premier League, just any sports league that has that level of success. And I mean, I kind of want to go to you as a fan. Like, what does that mean to you that you see something that you're loving, that you're behind, and you're just seeing them win?
So we're very lucky because it is a pro sport. This stuff doesn't happen by mistake. We constantly put a good team out there, and they go out and they put their best effort into it. We, just like every other team, we have our moments through the season where it's a down point. This year we struggled scoring for quite a bit of the season, but we were getting those draws, still getting a point out of games. So we were very lucky to do so, to finish second. The playoffs are a whole new season. It's just about getting into the playoffs. Once you're into the playoffs, it's day one all over again, right? And I think we proved that this year. We went up against Cavalry twice in the playoffs. They finished the season 13 points above us and anyone else, which is impressive. So hats off to them for a great season. And let's keep living in the moment because it's not going to last forever. Eventually, teams are going to catch up to us. We've set a standard. They're pushing their best foot forward. How do we keep ourselves motivated to keep this success continuing? It's tricky. It's hard because we don't know what failure is, really. We went to 5 finals. We've won 4 of them. So that one year we did lose. That year we were in CONCACAF League, which is no longer around. But we went to the semifinals, and we were in Montagua, I believe in Honduras, 2 nights before the final here. And they had a layover in a Texas airport. So it wasn't until 36 hours before the final here that we actually landed in Canada.
There's something that I find unique. To be truthful, I'm not a soccer fan. This is a sport that is somewhat alien to me, but I find it fascinating. And because you yourself are the Barton St Batallion, like the official fan group, and I mean, every sport has their loyal fandom. They have their loyal following, but for me, this is unique. This is like the franchise put us in touch with you as somebody that we should speak with. And I don't know if we approach any sports franchise, any sports like they say, we have the fans that we want you to talk with, that we actively engage with our fandom and to create that community. Can you just maybe go into a bit of that uniqueness about this? Because there are people outside who are like, what are we talking about? What's a Barton St Batallion for Forge FC?
Right. So, you go over to Europe and you have these big supporter groups and they're massive. So we're just a brand new league, a brand new team. Well, we're a brand new supporters group. Sure, we've been around since 2016 as a group because we knew we were getting a team. And what that started with, I wasn't a part of it back in 2016. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But James Hutton started the group and Alan Gorman took over for him. I succeeded Alan Gorman. Alan did a great job in his 5 years leading the group. And he really laid a foundation out for me. So it was an easy transition to step into and take over and just run with what we already had established. We have a good connection with the club. You always keep each other at an arm's reach. You're there to, lean on each other and ask questions and help each other out when needed. And we do a really good job of that. It's very unique. I hope that if somebody like a podcast, a radio host, whatever, reached out to Cavalry, I really hope that their club would say, you know what, this is the leader of the Foot Soldiers. You should talk to Craig. Or same with Pacific, Halifax. Halifax is a great supporters group. They, aside from us, they show up every game. They're almost a sellout every game if they aren't. Mm-hmm. But that's another unique thing too with this league is you look at it, 3 of our stadiums are CFL stadiums. You got us and Winnipeg No, in Ottawa. Ottawa plays in their CFL stadium too. Other than that, it's university campus stadiums. It's it's these little grounds where they might hold 5,000 seats, which is unique in their own right. And I'm kind of jealous of it because it's hard to say. Like you look at our stadium, what is it, 27,000 seats or something like that. And for the final, we filled 14,000. So the whole lower bowl was almost full. It was just the west side had a few more seats. But if we had a smaller stadium that was 15,000 seats, it would have been a packed house. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
it's like
so they're kind of blessed with that.
Yeah, it is, but it's a good atmosphere at the games. I think I've really enjoyed every game I've gone to, and so I definitely encourage people to go and check it out, even if you've never been to a soccer game before. It's ironically enough, although I'm from the UK, I never followed soccer before I came here, and it was actually kind of first going to some of the women's internationals, and then this that's kind of drawn me into it, and friends and girlfriends and people like that who are really into soccer. But it's been a blast. It's really been a lot of fun. So if you want to, if you're in the Hamilton area and you want to go to something that seems like you're not going to have to mortgage the house for starters to buy a ticket and get some really good entertainment, I would say go for it. And it, like I say, it has that kind of community feel to it that I really like. I know, if you go to Europe, there's not just the premierships and the Serie A and all the rest of it, but there's also all those lower level clubs that have really dedicated, passionate supporters, even down to sort of Division 4 or Division 5 or whatever. And I'm not comparing the Forge are way above that; they're in the Premier League, but still, it's that I like that kind of community sort of passion side of it. I think that's it's good to see, and I think it's something that deserves to be supported. And I hope we're a little part of the media. I hope some other local media get on board too, because it deserves to get the support and to get it while the team's doing so well, in particular, because right now it's a dynasty. Hopefully it can last a few more years. But like you say, really, it's a story where you hope for success of the entire league and all the teams in it, because I guess the stronger they are, the stronger the whole picture will be. But I mean, what's your hope, I guess, for the next few years, not just for the team maybe, but for the league?
The next few years for the league, I want to see it grow. It's going to take a lot of work for that to happen. There's, York United, I know, has new ownership coming in. I think it's going to be announced within the next 30 days. I remember watching something on One Soccer last night about it. Briefly heard a little bit, didn't hear it all, but it sounds like a bigger club might be taking over the ownership, which is good. Mm-hmm. You look at Ottawa, Atletico Madrid bought Ottawa, and
wow,
they've put money in there and fueled them and done a really good job with the club. Mm-hmm. And I think that'll help York. They need to find a location that fits them best because they are close to TFC. TFC2 actually shares the grounds with York. So I think finding their own home in a market that's going to benefit them will be really beneficial to the club surviving. Mm-hmm. And I believe there's another club up for sale in the league. I'm not going to speak on it. But they need to solidify that ownership, have a ground structure to work off of and build off of, and the clubs that are out there, like, work with your supporter group, help them out, help them grow, and it's going to be better for you. It'll be beneficial for you. But I want to see more teams. Saskatchewan needs a team. There was rumors about it. Let's get them a team. Edmonton, they deserve to have a team back. Let's put a winning team there that will draw the fans out. And there's other places too. Quebec. We don't have a team in Quebec in the CPL. There should be. FC Laval has been around for quite a bit in League One Quebec. We actually played them in the Canadian Championship this year at home. So do you know how the Canadian Championship structure works?
No, why don't you just inform us?
Yeah. So it's a tournament. It's an in-season tournament. So you have all the Canadian Premier League teams in it. You have Vancouver Whitecaps, FC Montreal, and Toronto FC in it. And you have the three winners from the big League One league. So you got League One BC, League One Ontario, and League One Quebec. I can't remember who this year's winners are that are advancing off the top of my head. But the way it works is all the teams, there's like 4 that get a bye. So it'd probably be either Calvary or Forge. Might be Forge because we actually won the playoffs. And the 3 MLS teams get a bye from the first round. And they all end up playing each other. We've played Montreal 3 times now. We played Toronto FC once for the 2020 Canadian Championship. And I just got to tell you, I cannot take another penalty kicks.
Hey, I'm English. Don't talk to me about penalty kicks.
Yeah. Most stressful time you'll ever have at a game, especially the very first game I got to see penalty kicks in was against FC Montreal. And it went all 11 kickers. And I don't know if Tristan Henry knew he was up to kick because he is the keeper. But yeah.
It's really a sport. I mean, that's the one thing about soccer that people sometimes say, well, there's a 0-0 draw or whatever. It's like, yeah, but it's the rarity of the goals that makes it so stressful, that makes it unlike any other sport. That it's the kind of drama you get from that is unparalleled, I think.
I was just gonna, when I was doing a bit of research into this episode, because again, I'm a neophyte when it comes to soccer, and I was trying to think of like, how would I compare the CPL? And I thought, do I compare it to the CFL? No, maybe not. I'm not sure if that's quite apt. But I was thinking like, I don't think it really matters. But it's what I thought was, as you're speaking, I'm thinking what makes it unique is like it's that smallness and that intimacy and that those groups such as yourself that make this such a unique league, professional sports league, and that really, like, I was thinking like Hamilton, York, Halifax. I'm originally from Halifax, so the idea of Halifax having like a professional sports team is something like, wow, that's new. But just the fact that there's so many cities and towns around the country that could access this, and organization, supporter groups like yourselves popping up in these small communities, that it adds that vibrancy in that community, and that I don't know what, but just that when that other team comes to town, like, no, this is our territory, we're defending our field, our pitch, and it's just something that I don't think really it can really exist outside of this.
Yeah, so
there's a lot there.
It's nice for them to have a team outside of the Mooseheads, right? Because it was just the Mooseheads for how many years? Valor's in Winnipeg. What does Valor need to be successful? I go back to Saskatchewan needs to have a team. You put a team in Saskatchewan, there's an immediate rivalry, related to the CFL. The Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they hate each other. Yeah. That will roll over into the CPL. And you know what? It's going to create a rivalry. It'll create intensity, and it would be great to see. And I think it would help Valor in the long haul if Saskatchewan had it, because you create these rivalries that already exist, whether the team's there or not.
Mm-hmm. So tell us your Hamilton, the Forge FC, your rivalry, the team that you'd say they must be defeated each time you face them. Dish out the dirt. Let's go.
Calvary.
Really?
Hands down Calvary.
Okay. Like
York United, sure. Ottawa, yeah, sure. But nothing gets our crowd going like when Calvary comes to town.
Okay. Why Calvary?
Goes right back to 2019, our first year, the inception of the league. Calvary won. So the way the first year was broken down, there was 2 halves of the year. They won the spring and they won the fall. Mm-hmm. And when it went to the playoffs, we ended up playing them. And I believe we drew leg 1, but we won the second leg in Calgary. And a rivalry was born.
Those bastards. I can't. We know there are good people in Calgary.
Well, and thus far, the Forge seems to be having the better end of the deal. So maybe we should be magnanimous in victory or something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, eventually those tables turn, and when that game happens, it will be epic.
It was pretty epic 2 weeks ago, I gotta say.
Sure.
It was.
I'm still riding the high, I think.
Yeah, I've not been to too many playoff games in my life. Lucky enough that one of them was the big Blue Jays game when Jose Bautista hit a home run, and that was absolutely epic. And this was pretty epic. This was right up there. So
yeah, for people that aren't really into soccer, I don't think they can appreciate it as much as the avid fan would. But everyone who saw that game knows it was something special.
Yeah.
And it really was. And to be part of that atmosphere, to help build that atmosphere and create it was, I've got a lot of memories of that day that are going to stick with me forever. I mean, Bekker at the end of the game pulled me down on the field so I could raise the trophy in front of the section. That I'll never forget that. That's going to stick with me for as long as I live,
So there might be somebody listening to this podcast and they have a son or daughter who they're looking to take out to a fun event. How would you, to that newbie, to me, how would you recommend us taking that dive into Forge FC fandom?
Yeah, so if you get free tickets, you're probably not apt to go because you don't have anything invested into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to pay $20 for a ticket, whatever, then you're invested. You're probably going to go to it because you've put money into it. There's value there. It's a sport. It's in the city. We lost the Bulldogs. Bulldogs are in Brantford. There's the Ticats. Well, Ticats don't start till June. What are you doing in April? Come out to a soccer game. We have a game in February actually because we made CONCACAF Champions Cup.
Oh wow, yeah. Well,
we're all going to go freeze.
Well, yeah, but I mean, $20 for a game. I don't know where you're going to get that deal anywhere in the 905 these days. Not anymore. And you're playing down at Tim Hortons Field, which is, everybody knows where that is in the Hammer. And yeah, I'll admit I'm probably going to take in a game or two for $20 a seat. I'll freeze my ass off and drink a beer and head home afterwards.
It's only freezing in the last part of the season. It's nice and warm in the first bit, which is another big advantage of soccer in Canada. It's actually not cold every game. Well, thank you so much, Erick Harrisson, for joining us. I think your passion and enthusiasm comes across certainly, and just my experience has been really positive of the whole thing. So definitely want to share that with our region and say, get out and support this team, or if you're closer to York, go see that team. Support this league.
Yeah, support the league 100%.
Yeah, it's worth supporting. It's and you'll get some good entertainment. So yeah, thanks Erick so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, and all the best with I can't even say it right. CONCACAF.
Best with that.
Yeah, and with the 2024 season, let's hope you're back next year to talk about another victory for the Dynasty.
I would love it. Yeah, and just before I go, just so everyone knows, 4 years ago, I wasn't a footy fan. I didn't like soccer, and that was the end of the first year. I watched the final, Calvary and Forge. That's what made me a fan. I watched it. I watched us win our first championship, and I was like, why have I never been to this? So the next year, I bought tickets. COVID hit. Couldn't go to any games. So I had to wait for the second year. Well, now we're 2 times champions and I haven't seen them play. And that sucked. But finally I get to a game and, it reeled me in. I sat with the Batallion and it was just so fun. I started learning songs. You're a part of it. And it really is, like you said the word earlier, community. It really is a community. We have days in the off season or even during the season where we'll get together at Wingporium. We'll use the parking lot and we'll paint a new banner for a game. And it's just tons of fun. You have people from all different crowds that are a part of this, and they just come together for the one thing that they love, and that's footy. And the one thing I want to touch on from earlier was about why the Spectator didn't pick up on Forge game the next day. So after that final, I'm flipping through through the TV, and I get stop on TSN for Sports Center highlights, and suddenly there's Borges Olympico on TSN. You're the mothership broadcast in this country, and you want to pick up on the good moments. You got to be there for the whole ride. Help us build it and share those moments with us. Don't just be there for the good times, So
yeah,
that's my 2 cents.
Yeah,
Much appreciated.
Support a Canadian product, something Canadian players, Canadian product. It's, that big media should put their effort behind this. All our
100%.
leagues are American generally, apart from the CFL. This is something truly Canadian. You know what? We could talk all day. This is fantastic. Thanks so much, Eric.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, all the very best. Thanks. Bye.
Take care.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.